The idea behind solving by completing the square is to convert an equation that has two variables, like this, into one that would have only one variable, like this. Because once we've done that, we can solve this using the basic method, which is the quickest. So what we're going to talk about is how do we convert something with two x's into this perfect square binomial. So here's how it's done. If we look at this example first, what you want to do is we want to figure out what this constant term will be such that we can convert the whole thing into the perfect square. So this is called completing the square because it will turn it into a perfect square. And here's how it's done. You take the b term, the 2, and you divide it by 2, and then you square it, raised to the power of 2. That will be the constant term. So 2 divided by 2 is 1. 1 squared is 1. So we add 1. Now, what that guarantees is that this trinomial can be rewritten as x plus 1 squared. All right? So it no longer has two x's in the equation, just 1. Now, we know that this term here was 1 because we always take that b term and divide it by 2, and that will be what is inside the parentheses. If we wanted to, we could FOIL this out, and we'd get back to the original x squared plus 2x plus 1. So let's look at these other three just to practice completing these squares and writing them as the binomial squared. All right, so if we look at this problem here, we take the negative 20 and we divide it by 2, and then we're going to square it. So negative 20 divided by 2 is negative 10, and negative 10 squared is 100. So we would add 100. Then we could rewrite this trinomial as x minus, and it's minus because it's negative 20 divided by 2, which is negative 10. So x minus 10 squared. If we look over here at this one, same thing. Negative 8 divided by 2 is negative 4. Negative 4 to the power of 2 is 16. All right, so this trinomial would turn into x. Negative 8 divided by 2 is minus 4 squared. And one last one here. Take positive 18 divided by 2 gives us 9. 9 squared is 81. So it'd be plus 81. We can rewrite that as x. Take this, divide it by 2. That's a positive 9. Okay, so that is completing the square. Now we're going to use that to solve some equations by converting them to this new form and then solving using the basic solving method. So let's look at this example here. Note that the setup before we start completing the square is we need to manipulate the equation to the form x squared plus dx equals e. Now the d and the e just mean there can be coefficients in front of the x, and we'll just equal a number. The big thing is that we can only have one x squared. So the x squared can't have a coefficient. Okay, so right now I need to manipulate this equation. I have 1x squared, but I don't want to have any numbers besides the x terms. So we have to move the 8 over. So it's x squared minus 8x equals negative 12. So this is the x squared plus dx equals e form. And now we can complete the square on the left side of my equation. So on the left side here, I'm going to say this is x squared minus 8x, and now I'm going to complete that square. All right, so that'd be negative 8 divided by 2 squared would be a 16. Now, since this is an equation, if I add 16 on the left side, I have to also add it on the right side. Otherwise, the equation's not balanced. Now, what's nice about this is the left side of the equation can now be rewritten as x minus 4 squared. equals 4 on the right side, because this just reduces to 4. Now this here is just a basic method equation. So all we would do is try to get x by itself. So we could square root both sides. That would give us x minus 4 equals positive and negative 2. And then we can add 4 to both sides. So x is positive, let's retry that. We'd add 4, so it'd be x equals 4 plus and minus 2, which means x is 6 and 2. All right, so again, the idea is once we've completed the square, we rewrite it as a single x equation. We can solve using the basic method right here. All right, let's look at one more example. All right, so I need to manipulate it to the form x squared plus dx equals e. So the first thing I want to do is let's get all our x's on one side. So let's add 7x to both sides. So that's 2x squared plus 8x equals negative 14. Okay. Now the only thing that is not in the form is I have this 2 here. So to get rid of that 2, I'm going to just divide both sides of the equation by 2. So now it's x squared plus 4x equals negative 7. Make sure that when you divide a whole side by 2, each term gets divided by the 2. So the 8x also gets divided by 2. All right, so now I'm going to complete the square. We've got x squared plus 4x plus some number equals negative 7. So we take the 4, divide it by 2, and square it. 4 divided by 2 is 2. 2 squared is positive 4. So I need to add 4 to the left side. Then that means I have to add it to the right side as well. The left side now turns into an x plus 4 divided by 2. So 2 squared equals negative 3. All right, so now this is this is what our goal was. We converted it to the basic form. So now we'll solve this basic method quadratic. So we'll square root both sides. It's going to give us x plus 2 equals positive and negative I root 3, because the negative is under the radical. And then we'll just subtract 2 from both sides. So x equals negative 2 plus or minus I root 3. And we can't combine the negative 2 and the root 3 because you can't combine a radical and a non-radical. So that there would be our solution. All right, why don't you pause and try this? Okay, and I actually have the steps written out so you can kind of check as you once you're finished.